Hey, welcome. This is Jelle from Growing Bonsai, and today we're looking at pines and particularly the diseases on pines. In early spring, it's a good time to check your pine, because this is when a couple of diseases may pop up that if you deal with them effectively, you can reduce the impact dramatically. Now, pines are a very common group of plants used for bonsai. The needles reduce well under bonsai technique. The branches once set create elegant lines and patterns, and overall they have become a symbol of bonsai. So it's junipers, it's pines, and that basically sets the tone for bonsai. So one of the first things to look for when you are in spring looking at your pines is something that you see here on this needle. Now this needle has little things moving on them. It looks like a blob of wax, looks like a bit of resin, but in fact these are aphids. These aphids, they live in little groups and they sit along the whole needle, sucking the sap away. You can leave them alone, but it's better to treat. Now, because there are natural predators to these aphids, I don't like to use real poison. Yes, the predators are behind on my aphids, but once the predators catch up, they will deal with the aphids quite effectively throughout the growing season. So in early spring, I normally don't really use anything except for alcohol and soap in water in a spray can, and just spray the aphids with that. This will effectively directly kill the aphids that are on the needles. In the next 5 minutes or so, it's still a problem for other insects that might land up, but as soon as it dries up, it's fine and safe for other insects. So this is immediate contact control, but doesn't do anything for later visitors, which is perfect for biological control. Now the second thing to look out for in spring is also an insect. And I've been looking around, but I can't find any, so I'll look for some pictures. And basically these are woolly aphids. Woolly aphids also live off the sap of the plant, and you'll find them here right at the base of the new growth for this year. And they overwinter as eggs. So normally you'd be able to control this by a winter spray, like a winter oil or winter soap wash. Giving your tree a good treat with a winter soap, and you will get rid of these quite effectively. Simultaneously, of course, in spring you can start cleaning away the woolly aphids as you see them and then spraying the whole plant. The wool is actually sort of a wax coating, and the wax coating doesn't wash off all that easily. So it is important there to really try to get them out by hand first, or get a spray that is very specific for woolly aphids. In late May, if you look at the new growth on your pine, you might find areas where the needles are very, very short, and there seem to be very, very short pieces of pine needle everywhere between the needles. And if you open it up, there's a little caterpillar in there. This is a sawfly, and in fact it is a nest building sawfly. And what they do is they eat the needle, and the excrement that come out are all intertwined with silk that they create. And with that they build some sort of a cocoon between the needles, nice and protected, and they keep on eating. These you can just take away. You take a little stick, you open up the nest, you toss the caterpillar out, done. You could feed them to the birds if you want. You could kill them. Or you could just leave them on your pine, but then they'll strip your pine completely bare. There's a second group, and they are colonizing sawflies. And they have the same caterpillars, but they sit between the needles, and as you approach and you tap the needles, they will come up and they start waving towards you with their whole body. Same thing, collect them, remove them from your garden. Of course, you can also spray them with insecticide, but as said before, I prefer to have natural predators in my garden, so I don't spray my trees. Now, on this tree, there is the final thing that you really need to look out for. The fourth and final thing to look out for are signs of needle cast. Needle cast is a fungal infection, and the fungal infection hits the needle. In the needle, it starts to propagate, and over the next spring, it will come out. The needle starts to this color. It starts with a little dot, and slowly but surely the needle gets browner and browner and falls off. This of course is not very good for the tree because you lose needles, and the infection can be so bad that your whole pine will go bare. So this is something to really take care of. And the way to deal with it is twofold. First of all, you need to collect all the needles from the ground around your pine. Don't leave old needles around, because if you have old needles, let me see, I don't have any old needles here. An old needle like this, it has black dots, and the black dots over the course of the summer will start sending out the spores that infect the new needles. And those will next year create spore forming needles again. So these you need to collect over the course of the summer as they fall off. But if your tree is heavily infected yet growing well, you can also already start peeling them off from the tree once the first needles start to appear. It is a little tricky because it weakens your pine, but it does remove a lot of the spore forming in your tree. Next to this, you apply a copper fungicide or a rust stopping fungicide on your tree. Make sure you check that it works for pines, and you need to apply this somewhere in summer. Typically they say once the first needles start to form, so from June, July onwards, with an interval of 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how wet and how warm it is. Of course, your pine should stand in a very well ventilated area. Keep the foliage as dry as possible. These stand out in the full rain, so they stay moist. But this is basically all you can do. It is a very nasty infection, and to be honest, in Europe, most fungicides are not all that effective on needle cast. So I am not very happy this pine has needle cast. I've seen it on another tree as well, and today I will start plucking a few of these needles away. Naturally, I try to sanitize the area around the tree well, but well, what can I do? Once the fungus is there, it's there, and it's hard to get rid of. So, a little recap. Pines are really great pines are really great for bonsai. You can make nice ancient looking trees. The needles do reduce over time, but in spring you really need to carefully check and see, do I see any old needles? These needles are old because I cracked a branch, but if you have needles that are dead for any other reason, check for fungal infections. At the same time, if they're not uniformly green, but you see little animals moving, you might have aphids. Check what precautions you want to take. Finally, if later in spring you see little clusters of old needles that look reformed, glued together as a little package, you might have little animals in there. The sawfly might be eating your needles. That's the time to take the little cocoons out, make sure you get the caterpillar, and remove that from your garden. Once you see the first ones, you need to repeat this a few times because they might come back. The sawfly is still flying around laying eggs throughout spring. For aphids, it's always good if you do treat, repeat it after 2 to 6 weeks, because they also might have laid eggs and they can still germinate over the season. With that, there's nothing stopping you from having great looking pine bonsai in your garden.